He refused to take her for the debt, but one look changed everything between them. The man, named Ahmed, sat behind his polished wooden desk, meticulously going through stacks of papers that told the story of other people's mistakes and responsibilities. Ahmed was known throughout the town as a man of rules and discipline. He had built his life carefully, brick by brick, after years of struggle, loss, and disappointment. People respected him, but few really knew him. Some called him cold, others called him fair, but everyone agreed that when it came to money and responsibility, Ahmed never made exceptions. Ahmed had learned the hard way that life rarely offered second chances. In his early 20s, a failed partnership had left him with debts he could barely pay. He had trusted the wrong people, given chances to those who didn't deserve them, and ended up carrying the weight alone. That experience had shaped him, carved rules into his life that no one could break. He refused to let emotions interfere with decisions, believing that feelings could easily lead to mistakes. This belief had made him successful, but it had also built walls around his heart. The ticking of the clock in his office was the only sound that broke the silence. Suddenly, the door opened, and in walked a young woman. She moved carefully, almost hesitantly, her eyes lowered as if she carried the weight of the world on her small shoulders. She did not look like someone used to asking for help, yet there was a desperation in her steps, a quiet urgency that Ahmed immediately noticed. She held a thin folder in her hands, and her fingers trembled slightly as she clutched it. Ahmed looked up, his eyes sharp, observing her quietly. She seemed out of place in his structured world, yet there was a certain calmness in the way she held herself. She did not burst into tears or beg loudly. She simply approached his desk and spoke in a soft voice that carried both fear and courage. "My name is Zara," she said. I have come regarding my father's debt. He passed away recently, and I have been told that the responsibility falls on me now." Her voice cracked slightly, but she quickly steadied it. "I don't know if I can manage it, but I came to explain and to find a solution." He had heard many excuses and stories of hardship over the years, but something about Zara's presence made him pause. He could see that she wasn't trying to manipulate him or seek pity. She wasn't demanding anything unfair. She was just a young woman, burdened with something she never asked for. After a few moments of silence, Ahmed spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Zara, the debt you are talking about, it was never yours. You are not responsible for what your father did. I cannot take payment from someone who had no part in this mistake. It would be wrong." She had expected resistance, but she had not expected such fairness. Most people, she knew, would have seen her as a target, someone to pressure into paying. Yet Ahmed had refused her. She turned to leave, but as she walked toward the door, Ahmed noticed something he couldn't quite explain. There was a quiet strength in her steps, a resilience that came from facing life's hardships without complaint. She carried sadness, yes, but she carried it with dignity. It was in that moment, as she left his office, that Ahmed realized her presence had left an impression on him, one that he had not anticipated. Days passed, but Ahmed could not shake the image of her determined face. He found himself thinking about her in moments he usually reserved for work alone. He wondered about her life, the struggles she faced, and the quiet courage it took to stand in front of him and admit the truth. Normally, he would have dismissed such thoughts as distractions, but something about Zara made it different. Meanwhile, Zara returned to her modest home, a small, crowded apartment that spoke of years of sacrifice and careful budgeting. She worked tirelessly, taking odd jobs to support herself and to repay debts that weren't truly hers. Despite her exhaustion, she did not complain. Her neighbors saw her as quiet and responsible, someone who took on her burdens without asking for help. She was used to being overlooked, to being treated as invisible, yet she carried herself with a dignity that made a quiet statement about her character. Back in his office, Ahmed continued his daily routine, yet there was a new awareness in his thoughts. He found himself reflecting on the meaning of fairness and responsibility. He thought about the people he had refused in the past, the ones who had tried to manipulate or deceive him, and he compared them silently to Zara. She was different. She did not ask for anything she did not deserve. She was honest, brave, and unexpectedly wise for someone so young. A week later, fate intervened. Ahmed was passing by a small cafe on his way home when he noticed her sitting at a corner table. She was reading a notebook, her brow slightly furrowed, clearly absorbed in some work. Something about the scene struck him. She looked so ordinary yet so extraordinary in that moment. He hesitated, then decided to approach her. "Zara," he said cautiously, not wanting to startle her. She looked up, surprised but composed. "Yes," she replied, closing her notebook politely. Ahmed took a seat across from her, a rare gesture for him. He usually kept his interactions strictly professional, but there was a curiosity now, an urge to understand the person behind the quiet demeanor. "I noticed how hard you've been working," he said. "I wanted to see how you were managing." He realized that life had presented him with a rare opportunity to see someone's strength without the usual distractions of ulterior motives. Her struggles were real, but they were not complaints. Her courage was quiet, and it resonated with him in ways he did not fully understand. Over the next few days, their encounters became more frequent, though always casual. Ahmed would see her in the market, helping an elderly neighbor carry groceries, or in her workplace, assisting a younger colleague. Each time he observed her carefully, noticing the subtle ways she carried herself, the patience, the determination, and the kindness that shone through despite her own hardships. He began to question some of his own beliefs. Could it be possible that not all people took advantage of others? Could someone be truly honest, brave, and self-reliant, even when life had dealt them a harsh hand? He did not have answers, but one thing became clear. Zara was someone worth noticing, someone who made him feel emotions he had long buried under years of discipline and caution. Meanwhile, Zara continued her life with the same quiet dignity. She did not seek attention or recognition. She only wished for fairness and a chance to live without being judged for circumstances she did not create. She remembered Ahmed's words, his refusal to let her pay a debt that was never hers, and though she felt a strange mix of relief and curiosity about him, she never allowed herself to think too deeply. Life had taught her that hope was fragile, and she did not want to be disappointed again. Yet the memory of that one afternoon lingered for both of them. For Ahmed, it was a reminder that not all human interactions could be measured in logic or responsibility. For Zara, it was a rare encounter that showed her that fairness and understanding still existed in a world that often demanded sacrifice and submission. As the sun set over the town, casting long shadows over the streets, both of them returned to their separate lives. Ahmed to his office, his mind unusually restless. Zara to her small apartment, her heart quietly carrying a spark of hope. The first part of their story had ended not with a dramatic confrontation or a life-changing event, but with something more subtle, more real. A refusal that was fair, a look that lingered, and the quiet beginnings of a connection neither of them had anticipated. It was a beginning born not of love, not of destiny, but of integrity, courage, and the small, ordinary choices that define who people really are. And in that beginning, the story of Ahmed and Zara had already begun to change, slowly, quietly, and irrevocably. Days passed since their first encounter, yet neither Ahmed nor Zara could stop thinking about that moment in his office. For Ahmed, it was unusual. He was a man of rules and logic, someone who rarely allowed emotions to interfere with decisions. But Zara's quiet strength, the honesty in her eyes, and the dignity with which she carried herself lingered in his thoughts. It was as if something in him had been awakened, something he had long buried under years of caution and discipline. Zara, on the other hand, continued to focus on her life. She had responsibilities that could not be ignored. She worked tirelessly to make ends meet, taking on tasks that many people would have considered too small or insignificant. Yet, she treated each one with care and patience, knowing that every step forward, however small, was important. Despite the exhaustion that weighed on her shoulders, she did not complain. Life had taught her resilience, and she had learned to face difficulties without losing her dignity. One evening, Ahmed found himself walking past a small bookstore near the town square. He had intended to buy a gift for his younger sister, a simple book she had been waiting for. But as he passed the corner where the cafe met the street, he saw her. Zara was there, sitting on a bench outside the cafe, writing something in a notebook. Her hair was tied back loosely, and a few strands fell softly over her face as she leaned over her work. The sunlight caught her eyes in a way that made them seem almost brighter than usual, and Ahmed felt an unexpected urge to speak to her. He hesitated for a moment, his mind running through all the reasons not to approach her. He did not usually engage with people outside of work, and he had always kept a careful distance from matters that could involve personal feelings. Yet, something about seeing her there, so absorbed in her own world, pulled him forward. "Zara," he called gently, not wanting to startle her. She looked up, her eyes meeting his for a brief moment. There was surprise in her gaze, quickly replaced by composure. "Ahmed," she said softly, closing her notebook and setting it aside. "What brings you here?" "I thought I should check how you are doing. It's not easy, but I am trying." It was as if she had accepted life's hardships without complaint, but without surrender. Over the next few weeks, Ahmed found himself noticing her more often. Sometimes he would see her helping an elderly neighbor carry groceries, offering a polite smile to a young child, or quietly assisting a coworker who was struggling. Each small act revealed something about her character that could not be measured in words or numbers: kindness, patience, resilience, and integrity. Ahmed, who had always relied on logic and practicality, began to question his own understanding of people. He had dealt with countless individuals over the years, many of whom had tried to manipulate situations for their advantage. He had learned to judge quickly, to protect himself by keeping others at arm's length. Yet Zara was different. She had no ulterior motives. She did not seek sympathy, she did not demand attention, and she did not try to gain anything unfair. She simply lived her life with honesty and determination. One afternoon, Ahmed visited the market to buy some supplies for his office. As he walked through the busy aisles, he saw her again, this time helping a young boy who had dropped his basket of fruit. She crouched down calmly, picking up the fallen apples and placing them carefully back in the basket, all while speaking to the boy in a soothing voice. Ahmed watched quietly from a distance, feeling a strange mix of admiration and curiosity. Later, they met again by chance at the cafe where she often went to study or write. This time, their conversation flowed more easily. There was less formality, less tension. They spoke about ordinary things: the weather, the market, small challenges in daily life. Yet beneath the surface, a deeper understanding was forming. Ahmed began to see the quiet courage in her choices, the way she faced life's difficulties without complaint or bitterness. And Zara, in turn, began to recognize that Ahmed was not just a strict, distant man, but someone who had been shaped by his own struggles, someone who understood responsibility in a way few others did. One day, Zara confided a small piece of her story, the way she had always handled responsibility for her family, the sacrifices she had made, and the fear of being judged for circumstances beyond her control. She spoke quietly, without dramatics, yet every word carried the weight of experience. Ahmed listened intently, realizing that her struggles were real and that her resilience was not born out of luck, but out of conscious effort and determination. Through these encounters, a subtle shift began in Ahmed. He found himself questioning the rules he had so rigidly followed. Could it be possible, he wondered, that life allowed moments of trust and connection that did not require strict logic or protection? Could someone truly be as honest, kind, and self-reliant as Zara appeared to be? These questions unsettled him, but also intrigued him. Zara, meanwhile, continued to live her life with quiet determination. She did not seek recognition for her actions. She only wanted to live fairly and honestly, to do what she could to improve her own circumstances without burdening others or compromising her integrity. The fact that Ahmed had treated her fairly and refused to take a debt that was not hers left a lasting impression on her. It was rare to find someone who could balance fairness with humanity, and she remembered his actions often, reflecting on the surprising kindness he had shown without expectation. As the days turned into weeks, their paths crossed frequently, though always by chance. Ahmed began to see patterns in her behavior, small gestures that revealed her true character. She greeted people politely, even when they ignored her. She offered help quietly, without seeking recognition. She managed her responsibilities with patience and skill. Each observation deepened his respect and curiosity. One evening, Ahmed found himself walking past a small park where he often took brief walks to clear his mind. There he saw her again, sitting on a bench and writing in her notebook. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over the trees. He approached cautiously, unsure why he felt compelled to speak with her yet again. "Zara," he called softly. She looked up, a faint smile on her lips. "Ahmed, you seem to be following me," she said lightly, though there was no real accusation in her tone. "I'm not following," he replied with a small smile, taking a seat beside her. I wanted to see how you are doing. It's good to see you." There was a quiet comfort in their presence together, an unspoken understanding that transcended words. Ahmed realized that he had started to feel something unfamiliar, a sense of care and concern for someone other than himself. It was unsettling, yet it felt right. Zara, too, felt a subtle change. She had grown used to managing her life alone, to facing difficulties without relying on anyone else. Yet with Ahmed, there was a sense of safety, a recognition that he saw her as a person, not as a burden or responsibility. It was a rare feeling, one she had almost forgotten existed. Over time, their conversations became more personal, though always respectful. They shared small details about their lives, their challenges, and their hopes for the future. Ahmed learned about the sacrifices Zara had made, the quiet strength she had developed, and the wisdom that came from facing adversity without complaint. Zara learned about the struggles Ahmed had endured, the reasons he had built walls around his heart, and the principles that guided his decisions. Through these moments, trust began to grow. It was not a sudden or dramatic trust, but a steady, patient understanding that developed from repeated encounters and shared observations. Both of them began to see each other more clearly, beyond first impressions or assumptions. They discovered that their connection was based on mutual respect, honesty, and the recognition of each other's strengths and vulnerabilities. Yet, despite this growing bond, both remained cautious. Ahmed struggled with the fear of crossing boundaries he had always maintained. Zara hesitated to rely too much on someone else, fearing disappointment or loss. Their connection, though strong, was tested by their own uncertainties and past experiences. And so, part two of their story unfolds, not with dramatic events or sudden revelations, but with the slow, steady development of trust and understanding. Ahmed and Zara, brought together by circumstance, begin to see each other in a new light. One refuses to let a debt define their relationship, and the other demonstrates resilience and courage that quietly change the way he sees the world. In the quiet moments of their interactions, the story begins to shift from a simple encounter about a debt to something deeper. The recognition of character, the acknowledgement of human strength, and the beginnings of a connection that neither of them had anticipated, but both could feel growing stronger with each passing day. Life moved slowly, yet in small, significant ways, Ahmed and Zara's paths began to cross more often. Their meetings were never planned. They were coincidences at first, yet each encounter carried a growing familiarity. Ahmed, who had once believed in strict rules and distance, found himself anticipating her presence. He would notice her from afar at the market, in the small cafe, or even on his way to work. Her calm demeanor, quiet strength, and gentle kindness had a way of making even the busiest day feel lighter. Zara, too, had begun to recognize him without surprise or hesitation. There was something in Ahmed's presence that was unusual but comforting. He did not pity her, nor did he offer help unnecessarily. He simply observed, listened, and respected her efforts. That respect, rare in her experience with adults and authority figures, made her feel seen and understood. She no longer felt like someone carrying a burden alone, though she never let herself rely too heavily on anyone. One late afternoon, Ahmed noticed her struggling with a heavy bag of groceries near her apartment. Without thinking, he stepped forward and offered to help. "Let me carry that for you," he said, his voice calm but firm. Zara hesitated for a moment, unused to accepting help. She looked at him carefully, reading the intention in his eyes. Finally, she nodded and allowed him to carry the bag. The small act of assistance, though simple, created a moment of connection that neither of them could ignore. As they walked side by side, Ahmed broke the silence. "You work so hard, even for the smallest things," he said. "I can see how much effort you put into your life, and I admire it. But thank you for noticing. Not many people do." Her words carried honesty and a touch of vulnerability, something she rarely revealed. From that day onward, their interactions began to deepen. Ahmed started visiting the market not just for his own needs, but with a quiet hope of seeing her. Zara continued her routine, but she could not ignore the warmth in his presence. They began to talk more, not just about responsibilities or the debt that had brought them together, but about life, dreams, and the small details that made each day meaningful. One evening, Ahmed invited Zara to accompany him to a local community event. It was a small gathering of townspeople, celebrating the completion of a new public garden. Normally, he avoided social events, but he found himself wanting to share this experience with her. Zara agreed, curious and cautious, unsure of what to expect. At the event, they walked among the crowd, observing children playing, neighbors chatting, and people taking pride in a shared accomplishment. Ahmed noticed how Zara's eyes lit up when she saw the joy around her, how she smiled genuinely at simple acts of kindness. It was a side of her he had not seen before, a reflection of her resilience and optimism despite her own challenges. As they walked, they began to share more personal stories. Ahmed spoke of his past failures, the partnerships that had betrayed him, and the reasons he had built walls around his heart. Zara listened attentively, her expression showing empathy without judgment. She shared her own experiences, the loss of her father, the weight of responsibility, and the sacrifices she had made to keep her life moving forward. Through these conversations, a bond formed, quiet but profound. They began to understand each other in ways that went beyond words. Ahmed saw that Zara's strength was not just in her ability to manage difficulties, but in her capacity for kindness and patience. Zara realized that Ahmed's strict exterior hid a depth of experience and emotion that few people understood. Over the next few weeks, Ahmed found himself thinking about Zara more often than he expected. He reflected on his own life and began to question some of the rigid rules he had always followed. Could it be possible to allow trust and connection into his carefully structured world? Could he let himself care for someone without fear of being hurt or taken advantage of? These questions unsettled him, but they also awakened a part of him that had been dormant for years. Zara, meanwhile, continued her daily routines, but she noticed the subtle ways Ahmed had become a part of her life. His presence was not intrusive, it was steady and reassuring. She began to appreciate the small gestures, a thoughtful question, a helping hand, a shared smile that showed she was seen as more than just a young woman burdened by debt and responsibility. One rainy afternoon, Ahmed found Zara struggling to cover a broken umbrella while walking home from work. Without hesitation, he offered his arm for support. "Here, take my arm," he said gently. "You won't get soaked this way." Ahmed worried about breaking his own rules, about letting emotions interfere with decisions he had always relied on logic to make. Zara feared becoming dependent on someone again, worried that trust might lead to disappointment. Yet, the connection between them was undeniable, built on respect, understanding, and shared experiences. One evening, as they sat on a park bench watching the sunset, Ahmed spoke in a quiet voice. "Zara, I have seen how strong you are. You manage so much, yet you never let it change who you are inside. I respect that more than I can express. Not just for what you do, but for how you see people. You notice things that others ignore." Neither needed to speak of feelings or intentions. The understanding was there in the pauses, the shared glances, and the comfort of each other's presence. Over time, Ahmed began to trust her more. He shared details about his life that he had never spoken to anyone else, opening a small window into the man behind the disciplined exterior. Zara responded with honesty, revealing her hopes, her fears, and her dreams for the future. Through these exchanges, they discovered that their connection was based on mutual respect and understanding, rather than obligation or expectation. One afternoon, they worked together on a small project for the community, painting a wall in a local school. As they painted side by side, laughing over spilled paint and teasing each other gently, Ahmed realized how natural it felt to be around her. There was no pretense, no pressure, only a genuine connection built on shared effort and understanding. Zara noticed it too. She had never imagined that someone like Ahmed, so disciplined and distant, could become a part of her life in such a meaningful way. The respect and patience he showed her allowed her to feel safe, valued, and understood. Yet, even with their growing bond, challenges remained. Ahmed struggled with allowing himself to care deeply, fearing that attachment might bring complications or disappointments. Zara struggled with letting go of old fears, worried that opening her heart could make her vulnerable. Their connection was strong, but it required courage and patience from both sides. One evening, as the town prepared for a small festival, Ahmed and Zara walked together through the streets decorated with lights and colors. Children ran past them laughing, and the air was filled with the smell of food and celebration. In that moment, both realized how far they had come, from strangers bound by circumstance to individuals connected by mutual respect, understanding, and quiet admiration. Ahmed turned to Zara, his voice gentle. "I never expected to meet someone like you. You have changed the way I see people, and perhaps even myself. And you have shown me that not everyone sees people as obstacles or burdens. You have made me believe that fairness and respect still exist." They learned that trust could grow slowly, that connection could develop naturally, and that understanding could be far more powerful than judgment or expectation. As part 3 of their story comes to a close, both Ahmed and Zara stand at a point of quiet transformation. They have learned to see each other clearly, to appreciate the strength and character that lies beneath appearances, and to value the bond that has grown through shared experiences and mutual respect. The debt that once brought them together is no longer the center of their interactions. Instead, it has been replaced by trust, understanding, and the beginnings of a deep connection that neither of them fully anticipated but both now feel. Their journey is far from over, but the foundation has been laid steady, quiet, and strong for whatever comes next. Over a debt had grown into a deep, meaningful connection. Their relationship was not based on obligation, expectation, or circumstance anymore. It was built on respect, understanding, and the quiet recognition of each other's character. Both had changed, in small but significant ways. Ahmed, who had long kept his heart protected, found himself thinking less about rules and more about people, their feelings, and the subtle beauty of everyday kindness. Zara, who had carried responsibilities silently for years, felt the warmth of trust and acceptance that she had rarely experienced before. The town was preparing for the annual festival, an event that brought everyone together for a celebration of community, culture, and shared memories. Colorful lights adorned the streets, Children's laughter echoed through the lanes, and the scent of sweet treats filled the air. Ahmed and Zara walked together, side by side, observing the joyous chaos around them. It was during moments like this, ordinary, peaceful, yet full of life, that their bond felt strongest. They did not need words to understand each other. Their presence alone was comforting, affirming, and grounding. As they strolled, Ahmed spoke gently, breaking the silence that had formed naturally between them. "Zara, I've been thinking about something about the debt and everything that brought us together." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "It was never right for it to fall on your shoulders, and now I want to make sure that chapter is completely behind you. It's about fairness and giving you the chance to live without being tied down by something that was never yours. You've worked hard, you've been honest, and you deserve that freedom." It was also a reminder that fairness and kindness could exist in the world, sometimes in the most unexpected ways. After the debt was resolved formally and legally, a new chapter began for both of them. Ahmed and Zara continued to meet, their bond deepening into a quiet companionship filled with shared experiences, laughter, and mutual support. They began spending time together beyond mere coincidence, visiting local markets, helping neighbors, and even taking small trips outside town to enjoy the beauty of nature. Each moment was ordinary in appearance, but extraordinary in the connection it nurtured. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the fields near the town, Ahmed and Zara walked along a narrow path surrounded by blooming flowers and tall grass. The air was warm, scented with the earth after a recent rain, and the world seemed to pause for them. Ahmed stopped for a moment, looking at Zara carefully. "Zara," he said quietly, "I have something I want to say. I've learned a lot these past months about fairness, about courage, about people, and about myself. Meeting you has changed me in ways I didn't expect." "Ahmed, I feel the same," she said softly. "I've been carrying so much for so long, and you've shown me that trust and kindness still exist, that people can care without expecting anything in return." It was not a declaration of dramatic love or sudden romance. It was a deep, honest acknowledgement of the bond they had built, one that had grown slowly, patiently, and sincerely. As days turned into weeks, Ahmed and Zara began to support each other in practical and meaningful ways. Ahmed helped Zara with small improvements to her home, offering guidance and assistance without ever making her feel indebted or reliant. Zara, in turn, shared her knowledge of the community and her resourcefulness, teaching Ahmed to see the town and its people through a lens of care rather than merely responsibility. They became a team in the truest sense, not bound by need or obligation, but by mutual respect, understanding, and trust. One afternoon, Ahmed invited Zara to visit a small library he had been helping renovate. It was a modest place, yet it held great significance for him, a sanctuary of knowledge and reflection. As they walked through the quiet halls, Ahmed spoke about his hopes for the library, how he wanted it to be a place for learning and community, and how he wanted it to help young people discover their potential. Zara listened, impressed by his vision and dedication. "Ahmed," she said, "this is wonderful. You're creating something that will touch many lives. It shows how much you care, not just about rules or responsibilities, but about people." It was rare for her to be acknowledged in such a meaningful way, and Ahmed's words carried sincerity that touched her heart. She realized that their bond had evolved beyond friendship, beyond admiration, into something deeper, a connection that nurtured growth, courage, and hope for both of them. As the days passed, Ahmed and Zara continued to navigate life together. They faced small challenges, as life always does, but each obstacle only strengthened their relationship. Ahmed's once rigid rules softened, allowing him to embrace moments of spontaneity, joy, and care. Zara's cautious heart opened slowly, learning that trust could be safe and that vulnerability could lead to genuine connection. One evening, as the town gathered for another festival, Ahmed and Zara found themselves standing at the edge of the crowd, watching fireworks light up the sky. Children laughed and played around them, music filled the air, and the sense of celebration was palpable. Ahmed turned to Zara, his eyes reflecting the lights above. "Zara," he said quietly, "these past months have been remarkable. I never expected to meet someone like you, someone who would change the way I see life, people, and myself. I want you to know that I care deeply for you. You've shown me patience, respect, and trust. You've helped me see the world and myself in a new light. I feel safe with you." The debt that had brought them together was no longer a burden. It was a memory, a small beginning that led to something far greater, a connection founded on understanding, integrity, and care. In the following weeks, they continued to build their lives together. Ahmed became more open, learning to embrace emotions and connections he had long avoided. Zara found strength in allowing someone into her world, discovering that sharing life's journey with another could bring joy, comfort, and growth. Together, they faced challenges, celebrated successes, and created a life that was richer, fuller, and more meaningful than either could have imagined alone. The story of Ahmed and Zara was not about dramatic twists or sudden transformations. It was about the quiet power of integrity, the strength of character, and the slow unfolding of trust and connection. It was about two people meeting by chance, learning to see each other clearly, and choosing to care, support, and grow together. As the sun set over the town one peaceful evening, Ahmed and Zara sat on a bench overlooking the river. The water reflected the soft colors of the sky, and the air was filled with the sounds of evening, birds settling, distant conversations, and the gentle rustle of leaves. They sat side by side, comfortable in the silence, their hands brushing lightly as a quiet acknowledgement of the bond they shared. Ahmed spoke softly, breaking the silence. "Zara, I never imagined that a simple refusal, a single look, could lead to all of this. But meeting you, it has changed everything for me. I feel alive in ways I haven't felt in years. I am grateful for every moment we've shared." In the end, Ahmed and Zara's story was a testament to the power of honesty, fairness, and patience. It was a reminder that sometimes, a single moment, a refusal, a look, a simple act of kindness can change the direction of life forever. And for Ahmed and Zara, that moment had sparked a journey that transformed not just their relationship, but the way they saw themselves, each other, and the world around them. Their story was not about wealth, status, or grand gestures. It was about the quiet, profound impact of integrity, courage, and human connection. It was about two people who, through patience, respect, and understanding, discovered that life could be richer and more meaningful when shared with someone who truly sees and values you. As night fell over the town, Ahmed and Zara walked home together, side by side. The streets were quiet, the stars began to shine, and a gentle peace settled over them. They had begun as strangers, connected by circumstance, but now they walked together as equals, companions, and partners in a life filled with hope, trust, and shared dreams. And so, their journey continued, a story of integrity, courage, and love that grew quietly, steadily, and beautifully, proving that even the smallest acts of fairness and understanding can change lives forever.